Hi guys, welcome to Pixel Affair. It's Kobe here, and in today's video we are going to see how we will convert this Pyro smoke simulation into this Lego simulation, right? Lego explosion using C4Ds Mograph clones and matrices. So it's just a normal Pyro. Actually, if I click here, you can see it's Pyro going up, and then we will use Mograph to convert it into this Lego forming the explosion and using normal Mograph stuff. So let's get into Cinema 4D, and this video is actually a bit like quite informative because there are several ways you can use that same technique in different ways. So let's get into Cinema 4D and see how we will do that. So I'm in Cinema 4D and I'm using Cinema 4D 2023.1 because that's the only one that has the Pyro simulation tag in it for now. So let's go ahead and create our explosion. So I'll come in here and I'll create a sphere. I'll make the sphere a bit smaller to probably 25, and I'll right click on the sphere, come to simulation tags, and I'll choose Pyro, right? So if I should go ahead and hit play, you can see we are generating our fire and smoke simulation, right? So we are basically cool. What I'll do is I'll reduce the voxel for the object to like say 3, actually maybe 3, yeah. And I'll select the Pyro object that has been created here. I'll come to the Pyro tab here and I'll make the voxel size as 3 as well. So now if we hit play, we should be fine. And then I'll select the tag again. You can see the surface thickness, it's set to 10. Maybe I'll reduce it, or let's leave it at 10 for now. I think 10 will be fine, right? Because in this case we are using it to drive our Mograph, so we don't want serious accurate anything, right? So now we are generating fire and smoke, right? But I don't want it to last forever, so I want it to come on and disappear. So what I'll do is that I'll let it play, and from like say frame 5 I'll come down to the density, which is responsible for the smoke, and the temperature, which is also responsible for the fire. And at frame 5 I'll set a keyframe here to the add density, set a keyframe, and the same thing, set and add. I'll set a keyframe for the temperature as well, and somewhere at frame 15 like I'll set them all to 0, right? So if I hit play, you can see it generates the fire and it disappears, right? Let me hide our sphere, we don't need it. It disappears, but it takes longer for the whole smoke to disappear. So let's make sure we come into the Pyro object again, the tab, and in the down here you can see we have dissipation. So this is responsible how quick our smoke and fire disappear. So I'll increase them to like say 10%. If you want it to disappear quicker, you can increase it a bit more, and if you want to stay, if you set it to 0, it will not disappear, always be in the same. So I'll set it to 10 by 10, and now if I hit play, you have it and we are cool. But our explosion that we are generating is quite small, so we want to make it explode seriously. So I'll come back to the tab, and down here we add fuel to it. So I'll come to fuel and I'll enable fuel, and now if I hit play, you can see it generates all of these things, right? Another thing is that the fuel type is set to continue, so you continue adding fuel to it and it will keep generating the explosion and everything. But I don't want that. I want to add it to some few frames, so I'll change from continuous to frame range, which is it will start from frame 2 and frame 3, right? So now if I hit play, just only those 2 frames that will be added. But then another thing is that the explosion is too huge and too big. I don't want that. So let's go and do some settings in the Pyro object in the tab. You can see the combustion is responsible for the fuel burning and all of that. So I'll select the fuel burning. I'll set it to maybe 1, and the ignition to 1 as well. Another thing is that the fuel density, I'll also set that one to 1, and then maybe the temperature, reduce it. In fact, let me make the temperature like 1000, and the pressure per fuel to let me make that one to like say 0.4 or maybe 0.2, right? So let's hit play to see what we have. And see we have our smoke. I think we need a little bit more of, let me increase the ignition rate to like probably 3 and 3 to see what we have. All right, I mean, we are getting somewhere, but I want a little bit huge explosion, but not that huge. This is okay for what we are doing, but I want it a little bit bigger than this. So what I'll do is that I'll actually, let me increase the fuel burning rate to like say 10, right? And let me hit play to see what I have. I like something like this. I like something like that. This is fine. Maybe I reduce the ignition temperature back to like 2 or something, but I like what I'm seeing for now. And let me hit play once again. So yeah, I think this is cool for my explosion. So now what you have to do is now go ahead and create a clones which you want to be affected by or want to use this explosion to drive, right? So to do that, I'll actually first of all use matrix before adding the clones on top. So now I'll come into my Mograph menu here, which you can also find up here, and I'll choose matrices, right? And now let's actually do something. Let's hit play to see where our explosion sort of ends, right? Somewhere here, right? Somewhere here, up there. So let's make sure our matrix goes up to this point. So the first of all, the matrix is the cube for the matrices are too big, so I'll select the matrix, come to the transform and make it like say 0.5, 0.5 again, and 0.5, right? So that will get smaller, and then the distances between them, I'll set the size to like just 5 and 5 here by 5 as well. So from here going now, I'll make this one like say 60 on the X, 60 out here, and maybe going up will make it quite huge, like 150, right? And that's a lot actually. So let's make this like say 120. I think 120 is fine. All right, 120 like covers the whole thing. So now we are going to use our Pyro to tell our matrices where to show and where not to show, right? So that's what we are basically going to do. So to do that, we will need effectors. So I'll select my matrix, come to my effectors, and I'll choose plane effector. You can see it's moved our matrices, and that's because if I select the matrix, the effector has been added here. If you don't, you can simply drag and drop it manually by yourself. So now our effectors are affecting our matrices. So let's first of all disable the position. We don't want to drive the position. What we want to drive is the visibility of our matrices. So I'll check visibility, and then in the plane, in the field, what I want to use to drive our visibility is the Pyro. So I'll drag and drop in the Pyro, but you can see everything disappears, and it's not driving it the way we want. So what's happening is that what we are seeing, this explosion that we are seeing in our viewport, is actually not there. It's just a view, like a rendered thing that is being shown to us, but we can't actually use it to do anything in our viewport, right? So for us to get it in the viewport to actually use it to affect other objects, you have to select the Pyro object, come to the object tab here, and we enable like whatever we want to use to affect our scene, right? So for in this case, because I use density, temperature, and flow, I'll enable those ones, right? And now you can see we have it in our scene. Now if I come into my matrix and come to make sure effector is everything is on, I'll hide our Pyro simulation for now. I come to the plane effector in the fields. Let's go back actually and hit play to see if something happens. All right, and it looks like nothing is happening for now, but we should be seeing something. So I don't know why, but we should be. So actually, hold on for a second. I think, let me first of all hide the Pyro, right? And you can see, yeah, something is happening. So what's actually happening is that when you are using the Pyro to affect your clones, especially through the effectors and everything, you don't get instant feedback in your viewport. So for instance, if I hit play again, let me enable the show the Pyro. If I hit play, you can see it's going up and everything, but then it's not affecting our matrices. But if I come into the effector, for instance, and select maybe anything part of the Pyro, and maybe come to the somewhere in the remap, and like just do any movement, I click on this, and you can see it refreshes and now it updates, right? So that's what's happening. You don't get like proper feedback in your viewports, right? And there's a quick trick around it. So the quick trick around this is that you have to make sure any value you find, any value within in here, somewhere in here, and like sort of animate it, right? So in this case, I'll set, let's say, the min, right? I'll actually set a keyframe on the min at frame 0, and till the end part, like last part of our scene, I'll set it to like say 0.01, something just to, you know, animate it, right? Not really to make any significant impact in our scene. So now if I hit play, you can see now we get feedback for our matrices, right? So if I hide the Pyro, you can see our matrices now are updating. So that's a quick trick around it. Whenever you don't get that feedback, it usually happens, right? Sometimes even in the vertex map, when you apply, sometimes you have those issues. So what you can do is add some sort of like insignificant keyframe to something to get it animating on constantly, so that it refreshes your viewport every frame, right? So that's the way around it. So now you can see our explosion is affecting our matrices and everything. So this is very cool, but I mean, I don't like to use the Pyro if I'm cool with my simulation and everything. What I want to do is I want to actually cache it or bake it. So I'll come to the caching and I'll make sure it's enabled. Actually, it's don't necessarily enable it. I'll just cache it. So bring it back here. I'll disable my matrices for now, and I'll go ahead and cache. Let me come back to the object. The ones I want to export as cache is just the temperature, fuel, and everything, so I can bring them here. And I'll come back to the cache, and I'll hit cache for we set it to where we want to cache it to, right? And then I'll actually create a new keyframe here, a new folder. I'll just not name it, and I'll just save. This is just to show you like how, so you'll quickly cache it. And now we are done. So we have our Pyro cached in our scene. So if I should drag, let me enable it. If I should drag, we should be able to drag it back and forth so that, you know, we are cool with it. So this is our Pyro cache, but still we don't need it in the scene. We are going, it's the same thing that's driving our plane effector. So if I enable my matrices, right, you can see if I drag it, you know, we see our Pyro affecting our matrices, revealing it. So it's sort of what it's basically doing is that it's revealing it wherever the Pyro passes, right? So we are cool. Another thing is that I want to make sure like every part, if I enable most of the parts. So for instance, you can see even though there are some smoke and stuff in here, but it's not really showing in the matrices because like the intensity of those ones are not really strong. So to do that, I'll actually crank up the strength. To do that, let me actually show. So I'll just come in here and I'll add a curve on top of our Pyro object that we've added in the field, and I'll make sure I crank it up to, like, say, if I push it up, you can see it's bringing these ones in. So I'll push it a bit more, right, to make sure it brings in as much as it can, right? But I don't want it to make it too so you just push it in to bring some of them back in. So that's basically what you do. So now you can see it brings these ones also in, right? So now that's basically what you've done. What's left is how do we actually give these ones I'll say color, or change the color from this random gradient to something different. And it's just as simple as coming to our Pyro, select our Pyro, and down here you can see the remapping. You can just enable remapping, right? And you can see we have, it's changed the color, right? And now it's created this color remapping tab for us. So if I click on the color remapping tab, you can see the color that it's giving our matrices are this sort of color, right? We can simply come in and change it to any color you want, like gradient. So you can see it's giving us these gradients. So from here we can come in and add the colors that we feel like we want to use in our situation. So maybe I'll make the black something like red or orangey, right? I'll click in the middle to create another knot here, and I'll make that one probably yellowish or something, and make this one a bit more, like, play around with the colors. You can make it blue, pink, purple, whatever color you feel like making it in your situation, right? You can play around with all sorts of colors. So that's basically how you actually play around to change the color, right? So now if you are cool, let me actually make it something. If you are, let's say you are okay with your colors, make this one darker. I think I'll probably make this one the black. I'll make this one red, change this one to something like yellowish or something. All right, so basically you play around with the colors and everything to see to get the colors the way you want. So now if you are cool with this, there are two ways to render it, right? So the first of all, if you have redshift, then you have to right click and make sure you add the redshift object tag. Come to render tags and you add the redshift object tag to render it with redshift with your object. Another thing is that you can use Mograph clones. So let's see how we do the clones to render this. So let's quickly create our Lego object, right? So let's come in, create a new scene. I'll create a cube and I'll make the cube just 5 by 5 by 5, right? So let's say this is our cube and make it editable. So I'll select the cube, come to polygon mode. I'll select the top polygon here, right click, then choose insert. I'll just insert it a bit and then I'll extrude upwards like a little bit like this. So now we basically created, this is going to be our Lego. I'll select edge mode and I'll select these edges, right? And then I'll right click and I'll bevel it, choose bevel. So if I hit bevel, you can see it's beveling everything, right? And I'll bevel it to the edge and it wouldn't intersect because it's set to limits. If I uncheck, you can see everything goes haywire. So I'll make sure limit is checked and I can add subdivisions to it. So let's add enough subdivisions to make sure we are fine with the logo, Lego, I mean. And now, so this is basically our Lego. Now let's add a little bit of bevel to it. But before we do that, you can see this at this point, we have 2 points sitting at the same place, right? So if I come to the points and probably, let me actually select all the points, right click and come to, if I look for optimize, you can actually find it in the, if I type U, it will optimize, but I want to actually come in to show you by itself. So if I come to mesh, remove, I can choose optimize, right? And now issue raw points which are very close together within some range together, right? So now I can come in here and I'll add my bevel deformer. It's going crazy. I'll set it to like say 0.05. You can see we have some bevel. I can add a little bit of rounding to subdivisions to it to make it a bit round. And now let's object current state to object, right? So now we have our object created. So we can simply take it into our scene. So edit, copy. And now let's go to our scene where we have our matrices. And now I'll edit, paste. So now we've brought our clones in. So the next is, let's first of all make sure this one is set to frame 0, right? And I'll come in here and I'll create my Mograph clone. I'll make the Lego that we created a child of our clones. And now sometimes you have to sort of go back and forth to get it to refresh. So I'll first of all, in the clone, I'll set it to multi-instance, right? So that first it will make it very fast when we add when we are cloning it. And then we set the mode to object. And the object we want to clone on is the matrix, right? So now it should be good. So if I hit play, right, we are generating matrix. Let's hide the matrix. But now you can see we are generating clones, but our clones are too small because we actually touched the matrix transformation. It's also affecting our clones. Let's actually make this one, yeah, one by one. You can see it's like our clones are close together, but let's leave it 0.5.5. Then let's actually scale our clone rather. So I'll take the clone and scale it 100%. Hold shift and see there is this percentage which you can see in here, right? Let's make sure it's 200%. That means and now our clones are back together. So now basically everything that we are doing now, we can hit render, and now use our standard render to render if you want to, or physical render, or still use redshift if you want to use redshift to render your clones, right? So this is basically how you do something like this, right? And you can see still we get enough feedback. So if you want a bit more detailed, like explosion and everything, you can simply make your clones small or your matrices small, and then add a little bit more details to it. Now, one thing I like about this is that this is just to drive the visibility of our matrices or of our clones, right? So it means you can use it to drive other things. So we can use it to drive positions, rotation, scale, and all of that. So there are several ways that you can use the Pyro to affect your clones, which in later videos we will go into use it to do a lot extra and nice stuff. But for now, I hope this was useful and you've learned something from this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you have any question, please leave a comment in the comment section, and then also you can DM me on Instagram to ask any question or something you want me to tackle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.